Hello. Before we get started, I just quickly want to make sure that you are ready for next week. So just briefly, so all your segments, you must make sure that you have your hook and a payoff, your point of views, and anything else. So this is from your link planning sheet in the textbook, okay? Please look at this to make sure that you have everything for your elements. So that you have some sort of an emotion you wish to evoke, that you have your promise links, that you have in your performance link your hook and a point of view and a payoff, okay, once again. And then remember, anything that you take from the internet, please make sure that it's something that you are interested in, that your audience will be interested in, that you have taken and you have made it your own, okay? You've made it universal content that is relatable, and that you perform the piece so that you don't simply talk about it, okay? So we're continuing where we left off yesterday. Okay, so we have been focusing a lot on management and roles and duties and responsibilities within the different radio sectors from a South African point of view and from an international point of view. So we are looking at managing radio in textbook from page 82 onwards today. So kind of where we left off yesterday. Okay, so we're starting with station and organizational structures. I have shown you organizational structures from our radio station's point of view. So now we're going to look at it from the UK perspective, but also we're going to look at the different types of incorporated company structures, because this is something that is quite important that you probably don't know a lot about at the moment unless you have a company, okay? So on that note, you've seen my face. I'm going to switch off my camera now. Okay, so we're starting with the structures of different radio stations, and we're going to consider how and why a radio station may be considered legally as either a single or a cohesive organization, and then the different structures within the radio industry. And we will again look at the roles of management and staff from a UK perspective, using an organizational structure from a community radio station and a commercial radio station. So, like we said yesterday, sometimes management does take on different roles, okay, more from a community perspective, less in a commercial perspective. And then we're going to look at why a commercial radio station may have both a local hierarchy, but also be part of a wider national, international structure that includes other group companies and service providers. So examples here for South Africa might be 947, Cape Talk, Jacaranda, East Coast Radio, etc., who are local hierarchies, but they're also part of wider national structures. So what does it mean if I talk about a structure, a requirement for a structure? An organizational structure helps define the roles and the relationships between different people, different departments, and functions within an organization. Okay, so it's important that you have organizational structure if you are part of like one of these bigger companies. So for instance, the likes of Prime Media, okay, or Kagiso Media, etc. It helps specify the division of work and the hierarchy, authority, and the formal lines of communication so that everyone knows where they are standing at all times within the structure, okay? I know this might not be exceptionally interesting, but it's really important stuff to understand this. So the incorporation of operating a radio service also gives comfort to those found within the initiative, so people who work there, allowing transparent financial accounting so that you know where we are standing with money at all times, statutory reporting, so who reports to whom, and a clear system of governance, so understanding from management down who does what where. So it's customary, but it's not obligatory for a separate company to be formed when applying for each individual license. even when the service will be operated as a closely controlled subsidiary of the larger group. So if you were to be part of, I don't know, so let's say Prime Media wanted to start another radio station, okay? Technically, they need to buy a new radio license, but they don't have to if they decide that this new station will form part of, let's say, 947, but maybe a different division of 947. So I don't know, like a gold version of it that they only play, or like an oldies version of it or something like that. So the company, the overall company, will own the license, also own all the facilities and assets used, and can enter into contracts with individuals and companies supplying services to support the station. So just to make sure that we are 100% on the same page, that you're understanding what I'm saying here, I'm going to show you, where did I save that? One of the licenses that I've previously showed you. So let's say, what is one that will work now? Okay, let's open 947. Right, so we've looked at this ICASA compliance report before. I'm just showing it to you from a company perspective, okay? So the company is Prime Media, but the license is under 947 Highveld Stereo, which should have changed to just 947 now. So again, the company here, Prime Media, you can see all their shareholders there, but overall it's Prime Media, and the license name, Highveld Stereo. So this is an example of what it is we are talking about at the moment. Okay, so that's what we are looking at here, where we say that the company will own the license, also own all of the facilities and everything else. So Prime Media owns the 947 license, right? And everything within it. So there can be tax and other financial benefits in this model. And in the event that the station is sold, it makes the transfer to another owner relatively straightforward, okay, depending on the shareholders who want to sell it. But overall, if you want to sell the company, or not the company, if you want to sell, let's say, the station that's within this company, it's quite straightforward simply to sell it. Okay, so let's look at the different types of incorporated company structures that we find. So the first one is a company limited by shares. So that was like I just showed you. 947 is a company limited by shares. So in this type of company that's limited by shares, the members own shares in the company, either by purchasing them all or by being awarded them, perhaps in return for services. So for instance, let's say you're an employee of MultiChoice. You could have bought shares in the company, but also after a couple of years, and if you do exceptionally well at work, you can be given shares, okay, for return of services. So voting rights are usually in proportion to the number of shares each member holds. So if you own like 50% up, obviously you will have more voting rights than someone who owns 10%. So it also depends on the shareholders, whether it's an annual general meeting, so an AGM as we call it. Normally a radio station has 2 AGMs a year, one every 6 months. And then whether you have directors that you've appointed to run the company in accordance with the memorandum and articles of association. So a station manager will be the director that they refer to here, okay? Or managing director, however you want to refer to that person. But this is the person that runs the company. So station manager, managing director, etc., who reports to these shareholders at the end of the day. So any additional income, surplus income, okay, can be returned to the shareholders. So the shareholders can make money out of this, obviously, which is why they do it. And therefore, it's not seen as an acceptable model for a community radio station. So community radio stations don't run this way. It's commercial stations that will run this way. Community radio stations do not have shareholders, but they do have stakeholders and board members. But no one makes money out of it at the end of the day, because with a community radio station, any surplus income that's made should be put back within the community, okay? Whether it is to train more staff or buy new equipment or whatever else you might do. There aren't anyone that's benefiting from the fact that we made money as a company. However, as a private company, you might have only one shareholder, and that single member may be another organization. So this is the form usually used for subsidiaries of larger radio groups, okay, like I showed you now. We don't really have commercial radio stations that only have one shareholder in South Africa. We normally have that have like one or two, that have like two minimum, upwards, depending on the radio station. Some of them have way more than two. For instance, let's see, I just showed you one that has a lot. I just quickly want to show you YFM's one again. This one doesn't help. Oh, yes. Okay, so YFM is an example of someone that is not a person, it's one company that owns 100% investment. Right, you should be able to see this now, okay? So their licensee is Wired, okay? Like YFM Wired, Pty Limited. And their license is 100% owned by Sabido Investments. So Sabido Investments owns YFM full out, outright. Okay, so a bit different to all the different shareholders that that 947 has, for instance. But they still fall under this share company. Okay, so they still fall under a company limited by shares. So a company that's limited by shares may either be a private limited company, so PTY Limited, or a public company. The ones in South Africa are all private limited companies, so PTY Limited. In a private company, admission to membership is usually at the discretion of the directors. So it depends on them. But in a public company, it's more difficult and expensive to establish it, but it's permitted to offer shares to the public. Okay, so if you have a company, again, like for instance, MultiChoice, you will have a PLC because the public can buy shares. In a private company, no one can buy shares, or the directors need to see to give you the option, but it's not open to the public. So in the past, many of the larger commercial radio groups were PLCs, giving them easier access to additional funds from the stock exchange. But it leaves them at the whim of institutional investors, because now you have a lot more people involved who are stakeholders and invested in the company. So it's easier to maintain control of the company if you are a PTY Limited company, okay? So companies limited by shares can't have charitable status. Why? Because they make money. Immediately putting them on a different bracket. So these kind of companies that are limited by shares can't have the radio station. Okay. Then you have a company limited by guarantee. Okay, different type of company now. So this is structured in the same way as the company limited by shares is, but they don't have shareholders, and it's generally non-for-profit companies that'll fall under this. So it's very common, extremely flexible corporate structure for voluntary, community, and social enterprise organizations of all types, and as a suitable vehicle for the community radio group wishing to become a corporate body. Okay, so here no one makes any money, but it's run similar to a commercial radio station, for instance. So members are not required by law to subscribe any money in order to become a member. However, they must guarantee to pay a sum towards the company's debt if it were to go out of business. Okay. The directors are normally elected by and from the membership. So this is a lot of campus radio stations in South Africa are structured this. They don't have shareholders and they don't really make money. Okay, any money gets put back into whatever it is. But they do have a corporate body run by community members, okay? And in the case of campus radio station, the license would be the university. The licensee would be the actual university, and people from the university will also sit within this body. So although the memorandum and the articles of association of the company radio license holder will prevent the distribution of any profits to members, directors or employees of the company could personally benefit by paying themselves exceptionally large salaries, which happens in some community radio stations, not in campus radio stations, because there are a lot of checks and balances in place within a campus radio. So there are people from the finance department who looks at this stuff. There is like the specific department heads who will look at this kind of thing. But in a community radio station space, station managers do tend to pay themselves big salaries and no one can see it. So no one would question it at the end of the day. So this is where fraud might come in, okay? And unfortunately, that is something that happens. So we try and limit that. Then you get what we call a cooperative society. So these are legally known as industrial and provident societies, so IPS, and they need to be registered with the Registry of Friendly Societies. So this is big in the UK, okay? They are run by a committee of management accountable to the membership, and they will typically hold voting rights at AGMs, again, general meetings, and will elect all or some of the committee. So it all runs through the members and through their AGMs, through their meetings, okay, annual general meetings or simply general meetings. So in the case of a community radio station, the IPS could be structured as a bona fide cooperative with the membership drawn from those working or volunteering within the station. So we're using volunteers here. Or as the society for the benefit of the community, where the membership criteria are detailed in the society's rules, to include perhaps those living or working in the area of benefit or supporting the objective of the service. Okay, so cooperative members are drawn from those working or volunteering within the station, or as the society for the benefit of the community, where member criteria has like a society set of rules that you have to adhere to, or you need to live in the area once again. IPS legislation does not permit members under 16. Okay, so 16 is the minimum age that you can start joining one of these cooperative societies. Again, we get a lot of community types of radio stations that'll fit this bill. Members may comprise individuals and or other cooperative or corporate bodies. So you don't have to be an individual. You can be a corporate body to join a cooperative society. Okay, as an IPS, so industrial and provident society, they must have a minimum of 3 members. So the least amount of people you can have, members, is 3, and they need to operate on the basis of a participating membership. So it's not suitable as a structure for subsidiary companies. Okay, it looks like the perfect model for a community radio station. Okay, because anyone can pretty much join if you fit these rules. But in practice, there are often problems with cooperatives, which is why our community radio stations aren't really structured this way. Well, in South Africa. So they are very democratic, but highly unwieldy in the decision-making and prone to executive deadlock, okay? So if both of us have a stance and neither of us are willing to move on our stance, we're sitting in a deadlock, and then it's quite difficult to figure out what we need to do next. So, yeah. Also, it will not attract tax or tax rates reliefs, and it may be difficult to attract funding with this kind of a model. So profit distribution is permitted in a cooperative if the rules permit it, but not a society for the benefit of the community. So once again, as much as it seems like a company that can work community radio stations, they don't really do. Okay. So then we get a community interest company. Okay. So the community interest company is primarily intended for use by social enterprises that need the freedom to trade as a company, but also need some objective evidence of their community benefit credentials in order to secure grant aid support. Okay, so in other words, just once again, this is a relatively new option for radio organizations that are looking for corporate structure. And the community interest company is primarily intended for use by social enterprises who need freedom to trade. So I can be able to trade as a company, but I also need objective evidence from our community benefit credentials so that we can make money or get in grants. Okay. So this, as such, would appear to be the ideal form or ideal type of company for a voluntary and community radio sector to take on. But in saying this, there's relatively little experience of how these type of structures will work in practice. But for not-for-profit principles built in, the community interest company should give funders confidence that their money will be spent appropriately. So this is one of those examples where you can put your money in without wondering or being worried about fraud, and that the station manager will take all the funds because of the way that it's set up. So with government talking of additional tax benefits for community interest companies, any new community radio group looking for appropriate legal structure would be well advised to look into the advantages of this specific model, okay, of a community interest company. So again, one that's being used more in the UK. And then station has using this structure in a more sophisticated way to enable more autonomy for different geographical areas. And they have had the following to say: we believed it was the best structure for us as a community radio station. Our next stage, as we serve a rural area, is to set up CICs, so community interest companies, for each of our small towns, so they retain independence, and then to create a secondary cooperative as an umbrella organization. So overall umbrella organization with all those CICs falling underneath them. So the next type we get is charitable status. Not-for-profit or companies with social objectives might also register as charities, opening up new fundraising opportunities and giving access to tax and VAT and rates relief. So a charity is defined as an organization that exists to benefit the public or a section of the public that is demonstrably in need through the pursuit of certain objectives that the law recognizes as service, would therefore need to demonstrate to the charity commissioners that its purposes fall within the legally defined objectives. So the advancement of education, the relief of property, what is going on with me? The relief of poverty and need, the advancement of religion, and other purposes beneficial to the community, including public safety, of racial harmony, the preservation of the environment, providing recreational and leisure facilities, and urban and rural regeneration in areas of need. Okay, so this would work for a lot of South African community radio stations specifically. So registration is quite a lengthy and relatively difficult process and brings restrictions on how the company may operate. Importantly, for a community radio service, there is a limit on the amount of income a charity can take from trading activities. So generally a 25% limit compared to the 50% limit on commercial revenue permitted by Ofcom in the UK. So Ofcom is one of the biggest, what do you call them? Radio enterprises in the UK. So a way around this would be to set up a completely separate subsidiary trading company to sell airtime and other services, with surpluses being paid to the charity. But this adds a considerable administration burden for a small organization. Okay, so it's not the easiest thing to do. You can't make that much money out of it, as it should be with a charitable status. If we look at South Africa's structures, the SABC is state-owned, right? We all know this. Funded through the public license fees and advertising. They only have one shareholder with one signature. Commercial radio stations are normally private companies with shareholders. Okay, for example, Prime Media is a Pty Limited with 8 shareholders with one majority under 50%. Wired FM, 100% owned by Sabido Investments, also Pty Limited. So this is normally how the commercial radio stations are set up, as Pty Limited with shareholders. Community radio stations, an applicant must be registered as a non-profit entity at least 2 years prior to lodging an application to register as a community broadcast service license. So this is kind of the structure in South Africa. So you can be not-for-profit, so NPO, owned or controlled by a specific community, and the station manager forms part of the board along with your secretary. Then we also have charity radio stations in South Africa. So an example, for instance, is the Children's Radio Foundation, as well as RX Radio. And RX Radio is a radio station run by and for children, operating from the Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital. So these are actual charity radio stations in South Africa, just to show you that we actually do have some of these. So what does the structure of a radio station board typically look like? This is an example from your textbook that is on page 90. So managing radio, page 90, example. You have your board of directors, then you have a board subcommittee, a training and education subcommittee, and a finance and HR subcommittee, and then you have your volunteer forum, aka your presenters, okay? All your volunteers. So the board, the structure of a community radio station board, in the UK, the board is made up of voluntary part-time members with the representation from the service area, professionals with relevant skills and expertise, volunteers and other users, and co-opted members of the community. Members are nominated and elected by the volunteer forum. This is the same structure that a lot of our community radios actually adopt, and a lot of our campus radio stations work the same way. So the broadcast subcommittee then is responsible for the board, for drafting programming policies and coordinating listening research or listener research, and monitoring output and performance and ensuring legal compliance. So in addition to 3 directors, it includes the station manager, the training and programming manager, and volunteers with broadcast-related managerial roles. The Training and Education Subcommittee is responsible for increasing their participation, the monitoring training, or rather monitoring the training of our volunteers, and the management and involvement of volunteers overall. Phew, I wonder if you just understood what I said. So the Training and Education Subcommittee is responsible for increasing overall participation, for monitoring training, and for the management and involvement of volunteers. That's better. The Finance and HR Subcommittee report to the board on relevant matters, whatever is needed. Okay, so from a finance subcommittee perspective, they will come and report on the finances to show us what has been happening financially, whether we are making money, losing it, how we're spending money. The HR subcommittee will talk to us with regards to the volunteers, how we're standing with volunteers, how many we've lost, taken on, anything that's been happening with regards to that. So then we have the Training and Education Subcommittee, who are responsible for increasing our participation, monitoring our training, and the management and involvement of the volunteers. Then we have, okay, so I've said this already, the Volunteer Forum, okay? Volunteer Forum provides a voice for the volunteers. So imagine like any kind of forum where you can go and say things, right? And any other users that we have can also have a voice here to influence the management of the station, to raise any problems, to develop programming ideas and devise broadcast events. So Volunteer Forum, big one that they do in the UK. I'm not sure here whether everyone has one, but I think it's very important because it's normally a forum that is anonymous, okay? So you can go and say anything on there. It's similar to what a lot of companies have, which is like a whistleblower platform, okay? Where you can say anything if you think anything illegal is being done or fraud or anything like that. And again, it's anonymous. So the station manager and training manager attend meetings of the forum, okay? So an individual may be a member of more than one subcommittee and can also be a member of the forum. So it's similar in South Africa, you can be members of more than one committee and you can be a member of the forum. Okay, structure of a community radio station. Again, so how does it differ? So this is the board, so board of directors, broadcast subcommittees, training and education subcommittee, finance and HR subcommittee, and then the volunteer forum that we spoke about now. So this is now a radio station. So under that, then we have the actual station, okay? And this is a proposed staffing structure for a community radio station in the UK, not in South Africa. So at the top, you have your station manager, then you have training and program manager, development officer, administration officer or administrative officer. Then under that, you have tutors and your chief program assistant. Then you have presenters and producers and program assistants. And under your development officer, you have project workers. Okay, so you can see it's a little bit different to the average South African structure. So only the station manager, the training and program manager, development officer, and administrative officer are full-time paid positions. Okay, so station manager, training and program manager, development officer, and administrative officer. These are paid positions. Everything else is part-time, okay, or part-time paid or voluntary positions. So tutors and project workers are part-time paid positions delivering specific activities, and all other positions are filled by people who work for free, who are volunteers to the radio station, okay? So these also get paid a little bit. These are for free. So that is community radio station, okay? So if we look at the structure of a commercial radio station, different to that, well, before we go into that, I just want to give you some background into what these guys do that get paid. So the station manager is the chief officer responsible for the day-to-day runnings of the station, managing the staff and overseeing various operational, legal, and contractual functions, okay? Has key responsibilities in fundraising, financial management, marketing, and sales of advertising and sponsorship. So this kind of station manager does a lot more than simply their own role, okay? Which is why they get paid a salary. Then the next one that gets paid there, the training and program manager. So they are responsible for coordinating radio skills training programs for the volunteers, for liaising with training partners, and the day-to-day programming outputs and functions of the station, including management of volunteers and trainees, music scheduling, overall management of pre-recorded promotional material, and management of your technical resources. And the last one there, the development officer and your administration officers. Development officer is responsible for identifying and developing projects with community partners across the service area, coordinating project staff, sourcing funding, organizing promotional events, organizing initiatives to encourage increased participation, identifying strategic development opportunities, okay? And administrative officer does the administrative support, the administrative requirements of the organization overall. So then others that get paid, project workers. So this is a team of roughly 3 or 4 seasonal workers who deliver educational projects across the service area. Program assistants. The chief program assistant works directly under the program manager. So where is that slide again? Okay. To assist in program management, liaise with presenters, organize on-air competitions, and input music onto the playout system, etc. This is the head volunteer who works part-time, up to 20 hours per week, gets paid for this. A team of approximately 6 program assistants working 5 hours per week provide research, production, program administration support to presenters and producers. Then you have tutors. So a team of 4 part-time tutors, 3 normally paid and 1 mentoring volunteer, working between 10 to 20 hours per week, delivering training activities. Individuals may combine this role with a project worker role, for instance. Then you have your volunteers, your producers. So in the region of about 45 volunteers. In South Africa, it's similar to that, okay? It's normally from 40 volunteers up, 40 to 45 volunteers. Responsible for presenting and producing programs each week, each working on an average of 20 hours per week for daily program staff and 6 hours per week for single program presenters. So this is different in South Africa. In South Africa, if you are a presenter, you can either do a show 3 hours a day, so 15 hours a week, or 1 show on the weekend, which is anything from 2 to 4 hours. Okay. So we don't go up to 20 hours per week because our South African employment legislation is a little bit different. So Switch Radio, which is the radio station that we used here, okay, in the UK, suggests that this structure may evolve over time to respond to a hoped-for increase in volunteer involvement. So they're hoping for a higher turnout of volunteers. Okay. Any questions? You still with me?
Yes, ma'am, we're still with you.
Okay, great. I'm glad. Okay, so now moving on to the commercial side of it. So we've looked in detail now at the other side. So from a commercial sector, there are no specific staffing requirements for a commercial radio license holder other than any commitments, for example, a specific amount of journalistic cover that's made in the application. So it looks at each individual license to see what the license says with regards to breakdowns and with regards to commitments like events and CSIs and amount of news, etc. So many of the costs of operating a radio station remain fixed regardless of the size of the potential audience. A studio microphone or kilowatt hour of electricity will cost the same regardless of the audience size, right? It's not, yeah. It'll just depend on what the brand and quality, etc. So smaller service with inevitably smaller income expectations usually become sustainable only if it can reduce its variable overheads. Okay, so for instance, using fewer paid staff than a larger competitor might. So whilst in a larger organization, it may be possible to appoint a separate individual to look after each function. In the smaller stations, only a handful of people will work there, and they will need to multitask and have a number of different roles. Okay, in a smaller commercial radio station, this is specifically for, again, the UK. However big or small the radio station is, there are always a number of key tasks that need to be performed every week. Well, every day as well. The essential difference between a station with a large staff and a small operation is in the degree of specialization in each individual that they have. Okay. So, as much as in saying that, what are some of the different types of roles that we have in the commercial radio station? There are lots. Okay. Like you can see here, program scheduling, music scheduling, presenting individual programs, program production, feature production, program research, news gathering, news presenting, sport coverage, compiling what's on type of information, collating the traffic and travel news, handling listener responses, so all those negative reviews, program promotion, making on-air trials, local advertising sales, local sponsorship sales, sales, promotional activity, national advertising sales, national sponsorship sales, other fundraising, commercial copywriting, producing commercials, scheduling commercials, aka your traffic scheduler, transmission engineering, studio maintenance, maintenance of computer networks, technical installation, handling station guests and callers, commissioning research, analyzing research, marketing, managing station website, managing human resources. We also have now managing social media, sending out invoices, credit control, bookkeeping, management accounts, general administration, the liaising with outside bodies, compliance with the broadcast codes and the laws, health and safety, building maintenance, security, cleaning. Okay, so there are quite a lot of different roles that a radio station can have. So in allocating the tasks of live radio service, you always need to have a backup plan. Okay, so no one person should ever be indispensable. So no one should be irreplaceable. And therefore, more than one name should be connected with any essential daily function. So I always need to have like a backup plan and a strategy in place for if someone leaves, who will take over, who else understands how everything works. We can't simply have one person who knows how the running works and no one else. So in practice, many of these jobs may be performed by freelancers or voluntary workers or contracted outside bodies. It's essential, however, that the ultimate responsibility for any key area of the operation remains with someone who feels that they are part of this community and who's committed to the future of the station, someone who believes in this brand, okay? Not someone who just comes to work to get like paid and leaves. So the manager must not allow a situation to develop where, for example, invoices are not dispatched for weeks, okay? So we're not sending out invoices because a freelancer found a more interesting work somewhere else. We deal with the question of which tasks in a commercial radio station might be performed by volunteers and freelance individuals, okay, which we're going to look at now as well. But in South Africa, we don't really have that many freelance individuals or volunteers overall, okay? Most of the positions are independent service provider contracts that you get. So you still sign a contract saying that you will be doing this work. It's not that you're volunteering, okay? Or you have a contract because you are a full-time employee, something like that. Okay, so this is a typical medium-sized commercial radio station in the UK. So you have your group management at the top, which is similar to our like board. Then you have a managing director or a sales director. Managing director is like a station manager. Okay, so then you have senior sales executive, another one, sales executives, and station administrator to assist with all the paperwork. On the other side, you have the program controller, which is the program manager. You have a assistant program controller or presenter. You have your presenters and a program assistant. Then you also have your news editor, sports and news journalist, and news journalist. Okay, and then you have freelance presenters. So it's a little bit different to the commercial radio station in South Africa, which has station manager. Then it has sales and revenue manager, but we also here have a marketing manager, and then we have our program manager. Okay, little bit different setup. So this is the South African version. Okay, so this is in the UK. Group management, managing director, program controller, sales executive going down. SA, station manager with an administrator, program marketing manager, sales manager. Under programming, have music compilers, on-air promotions, scheduling assistants, studio engineers, audio producers, specialist producers, and station teams. Marketing has event coordinators, PR specialists, digital marketing specialists. Sales has sales business unit and regional managers, account executives, booking administrators, and schedulers. Okay, so just to understand the difference between the two. So like any business, a radio station requires business services like financial managers, accountants, lawyers, okay? So even though we don't show it, it's still important, and they are dependent on the size of the radio station and the need at a particular radio station for this. So each of the business services support the station manager in making decisions that will enable the station to reach their overall business objectives and to deliver value to my audience, to my client, to my shareholder, and my stakeholders, everyone who has a stake in the company. In the case of community radio stations, they are volunteers. These volunteers might be paid a stipend to cover some of their expenses like transport, but they will mostly work for free. They're generally citizens that or people that come from that specific community and that are plugged into those issues and the celebrations that are important to the listeners in that area. So let's say it's, for instance, BMH Radio. You are a student at BMH to go and work there, right? UJFM, you are a student at UJFM to go and work there. Josie FM, you are a community member from that Sowetan region to go and work there. Alex FM, you live in Alexandria to go and work there, okay, etc., etc. So in exchange for their help at these community radio stations, volunteers do learn very valuable skills that can set them on the career paths. There's also a lot of freebies that you can get, okay, so like things that people give the radio station that they might not give away on air, and then we can give those to presenters and tickets to festivals and things like that. So there are a lot of pluses as much as there's no set salary in it. So this is essentially a non-cash benefit for a volunteer in a very highly competitive industry. Okay, so you learn a lot of skills in this competitive industry. So in this way, a community radio station operates both as a business, but also as a training platform or a learning academy at the end of the day. So just quickly again, the defined roles, we have gone through them, just want to make sure. So in South Africa, we have a station manager. They might be called station manager, or they can be called managing director or station director, whatever it is, okay? Day-to-day operations of the station, anything day-to-day, responsibilities in bringing in, well, in financial management, marketing, and in sales and advertising and sponsorship. Training and programming manager, responsible for all training and all management of the volunteers and trainees and music scheduling and anything else. And technical resources. Development officer, identifying and developing projects with community partners, coordinating this project staff, sourcing funding, organizing promotional events, organizing initiatives, and identifying strategic development opportunities. Then you have your admin person who does all the admin, project workers who deliver essential projects like educational projects for how many sessions you ever need them for. And then you have your program assistant, which works directly under your program manager to assist your program manager, who also liaises with presenters, organize on-air competitions and input. So this is kind of like the head presenter, okay, or head volunteer in this case. So I've worked at radio stations in South Africa that has a head presenter. So what they do is they choose one head volunteer, head presenter, and this person will work with the program manager and will also raise anything that needs to be raised. And it's kind of like the voice for all the volunteers. So a team of approximately 6 programming assistants will work like 5 hours per week, provide research, production, and program administrative support to presenters and producers. Tutors helps with training activities, okay? Individuals may combine this with project worker, but in essence, all you're doing here is you are assisting the volunteers. And then you have your volunteers, your presenters and producers, around 45 of them that work per week. So then you can go and have a look here, okay? Gives you some structures of radio stations. And then why is it that these organizational structures are so important? Lots of reasons for them, but we need structure, right? We need to understand the differences. So if that's like, if we go back up here, why is it important? An organizational structure helps to define the roles and the relationships between the different people and different departments and different functions within an organization. It helps you understand the hierarchy and the authority and the different lines of communications. It helps with transparent financial accounting and statutory reporting and understanding the system of governance, right? So it is an important function to have. So then just something to think about. How do South African radio stations or the structures differ from those in England, as we've just gone through? So you should have noticed a couple of differences between them. And if I ask you, you should be able to tell me the differences between the UK stations and South Africa stations in terms of our structures. Okay, any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Could you please reshare the screen?
Please?
I can't see the screen.
Why did you not tell me earlier? It's been on my side, it shows it's been sharing. Can the rest of you see it or not?
We can see, I can see it on my side.
I think it's because I joined late. I was just waiting for you to finish your point.
Oh, you should have just told me. Okay, let me just quickly share. Which screen do you want me to share? Which slide, rather?
No, I was following through. I was making notes as you were talking, so I'm fine. But as you go on, I can follow.
Well, I'm actually done. Well, there's this, so that you can see which pages. It's on 82 to 97. So all we've done is, so the last while we've been going through all the duties, roles and responsibilities of the different people within a radio structure. We've looked at the South African radio structure. So now what we've done is we've looked at the UK structures, and we've looked at the different types of incorporated company structures. Okay, so that's what we did. So we looked at companies with shares, companies limited by guarantees, by cooperative societies, and community interest companies and charitable status. And then I just gave you some info about South African structures with regards to our commercial radios that are majority private companies with shareholders, so PTY limited companies, and that our community radio stations need to register as a non-profit entity They are owned and controlled by a specific community, and they have a station manager that forms part of a board along with the secretary. And then we do have charity radio stations. We have the Children's Radio Foundation and RX Radio, which is a radio station run by children for children, operated from the Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital. Okay, and then we just looked at the difference between a UK community and commercial radio station board versus a South African radio station. So that's pretty much the layout. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So any other questions? Do you understand the difference between the UK stations and the South African stations?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So then we are done for today. Tomorrow I am going to do a class just to kind of wrap up everything that we've done with regards to broadcasting to make sure everyone is correct. So if you have any queries, any concerns, anything, tomorrow, 12:30, okay, I will be online.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, and
Thanks,
with that, I'm
ma'am.
going to say goodbye, have a good afternoon, and hopefully chat to you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.